It wasn't Harry. It was never supposed to be Harry. Those were the first words from a whispery prison phone call that leaked across 3 continents in less than 48 hours. And the woman on the other end? Ghislaine Maxwell, once the queen of high society secrets, now locked behind bars, but still pulling the strings of a global web that never really stopped spinning. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But what exactly did she mean? And more importantly, why is Meghan Markle's name now surfacing in the same breath as Prince Andrew on a yacht in the summer of 2007 with whispers of a pregnancy? Sounds insane, right? Yet the deeper we dig, the less insane it gets, and the more terrifyingly strategic everything starts to look. So let's ask the question no one wants to answer. What if the royal family's most controversial love story, Meghan and Harry, was never the original plan? What if before Buckingham Palace, before the wedding, before the Oprah interview, there was a yacht, a prince with a problematic past, a young actress trying to break through, and a powerful fixer named Ghislaine who knew how to orchestrate the entire thing? This isn't just tabloid gossip. This is about power, reputation, blackmail, and the kind of secrets that only emerge when the people guarding them no longer have anything left to lose. Because Ghislaine Maxwell has nothing left to lose now. And she's decided to talk, or at least tease. And what she's teasing is disturbing, bizarre, and explosively timed. Let's rewind for a second. We all know the current narratives. Meghan Markle, an American actress from humble beginnings, meets Prince Harry. They fall in love, endure press persecution, walk away from royal duties, and build their own freedom brand in Montecito. That's the fairy tale. But fairy tales are often used to cover up what really happened. And according to Maxwell, via cryptic diary entries, prison phone calls, and thinly veiled threats, the truth is far messier, far darker, and far more entangled with people who most of us would never want near a child's storybook. People like Jeffrey Epstein, people like Prince Andrew, and yes, people like Meghan Markle, long before she wore a Givenchy wedding gown. Let me ask you, have you ever wondered why Meghan's rise was so sudden, so surgically calculated, so picture-perfect? Or why so much of her pre-Harry life is cloaked in inconsistencies? Now imagine if the missing puzzle pieces weren't accidents, but cover-ups. Imagine if Meghan wasn't just discovered in the acting world, but selected, and not for her acting talent, but for something else entirely. According to what's leaking now, Ghislaine Maxwell was present at multiple Mediterranean yacht parties where powerful men, including royals, met young, ambitious women. These weren't illegal events. Not always. But they were exclusive. No media, no phones, just billionaires, aristocrats, and their so-called guests. And at one of these events, Meghan Markle allegedly appeared. You might think, okay, so what? She was an actress, she traveled, she networked, big deal. But here's the deal. There are no records of Meghan's whereabouts for several weeks in the summer of 2007. Her social media? Silent. Audition records? Sparse. Travel documents? Sealed. Now why would someone whose career depended on visibility suddenly go dark? And why, according to at least one insider, did Prince Andrew's travel logs also reflect a private yacht charter in that exact same window? Still not convinced? Try this. A handwritten entry from Ghislaine Maxwell's personal notebook, dated July 2007, references a golden girl, a secret scare, and a problem that must be handled quietly. That note was revealed during discovery in one of her many lawsuits. But the names were redacted. Until now. Because behind closed doors, Ghislaine has allegedly started naming names. And one of those names? M. Markle. Let that sink in. Ghislaine Maxwell, imprisoned for her role in Epstein's trafficking empire, is now suggesting that Meghan Markle was not only present in that circle, but involved in an event so sensitive, so threatening to reputations, that the royal family may have moved heaven and earth to bury it. And here's where it gets wilder. There are whispers, not just from Maxwell, but from 2 former yacht crew members and a retired private investigator hired by a European newspaper, that Meghan wasn't just on that boat. She left it in tears. And weeks later, a private clinic in Monaco allegedly received an anonymous client for a discreet procedure. That clinic no longer exists. But its records? They've just been subpoenaed by a foreign court investigating Maxwell's overseas dealings. What they might reveal has royal insiders panicking. Now, why is this coming out now? Why is Ghislaine choosing to drop these breadcrumbs from her prison cell? Simple. Leverage. She's angling for a retrial, or at the very least, more humane prison conditions. She wants her sentence reduced. And what better way to gain leverage than to dangle secrets that threaten the House of Windsor? Especially now, when Prince Andrew is already radioactive and Meghan and Harry's media machine is weakening under pressure from failed business ventures and dwindling public sympathy. This isn't random. This is a chess move. And if what Ghislaine is hinting at is true, then Meghan Markle's rise to royalty wasn't a Disney love story. It was damage control. But here's where things turn truly upside down. Because there's another name. Barely whispered, but allegedly present in one of Ghislaine's redacted statements. Not Markle, not Andrew, but Archie. Yes, that Archie, Meghan's son. Now, let's be very clear. There is no evidence, no confirmation, and no legitimate reason to believe Prince Andrew is connected to Archie in any biological way. That's not the claim. But what is being alleged is that someone, somewhere, attempted to use the rumor of an old pregnancy scare as leverage. Perhaps not to control Meghan, but to control who she ended up with. To push her toward Harry. To keep Andrew far away from the public eye. To create the illusion of a fresh, modern couple rising above controversy, when in fact, the foundation may have been built on escaping it. Ask yourself, would Meghan ever have been accepted by the royal family if this Yacht story came out back then? Would Harry have pursued her if he'd known about Ghislaine's files? Would the public have embraced her if they believed she'd once been a part of Prince Andrew's world? That's the power of timing, of silence, of erasure. And it might explain why every trace of that summer has been meticulously scrubbed, every witness silenced, every photograph sealed, every question unanswered, until now. Because Ghislaine Maxwell, from her cement-walled cell, is not staying silent anymore. So what happens next? In the coming chapters, we're going to follow the trail. We'll dive into the missing yacht logs, the photographer who vanished, the secret that may have forced Meghan's hand, the mysterious folder labeled MM, and the whispered phrase that's left royal courtiers sleepless. She was pregnant, and it wasn't Harry's. But before we peel back the next layer, let me leave you with this. What if the world's most talked about Duchess was once a pawn in someone else's game? And what if she's still playing by their rules? Because the next part of Ghislaine's prison confession will blow the lid off everything. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. They thought locking her up would silence her. But instead, it gave her time to remember everything. Ghislaine Maxwell had been in prison for nearly a year when the first handwritten page was discovered. Tucked into a beaten paperback inside the prison library, the page was signed only with a cryptic G. It was passed around in whispers, almost like contraband, before someone finally took a photo and leaked it online. The page was faded, torn in one corner. But what it said, and what it implied, was volcanic. The line that sent shockwaves through royal watchers, conspiracy forums, and even seasoned journalists. July 2007, she cried the whole night. Said he'd ruin her if she spoke. I told her, don't worry, Meghan, your time will come. She was late. We both knew what that meant. That was it. No surname, no location, just Meghan, and the phrase, she was late. Now, let's pause right there. In Ghislaine Maxwell's world, nothing is written by accident. Every diary entry, especially those from the years she lived like a queen in Epstein's orbit, was coded, layered, and purposeful. So let me ask you, why would Ghislaine mention Meghan Markle by name in a 2007 entry when the world didn't even know who Meghan Markle was yet? Meghan's breakout role in Suits was still a few years away. She was just another aspiring actress in LA, struggling to land gigs, bouncing between auditions and waitressing shifts. On paper, she was nobody. But to Ghislaine, she was already somebody. That one page of writing didn't just open a door, it cracked the entire ceiling. And once that page was leaked, things started moving fast. Within 48 hours, Ghislaine's prison cell was searched. According to one inmate, guards removed 3 thick journals, 2 USB sticks, and something wrapped in a towel. Officially, none of this was ever acknowledged. But unofficially, The prison staff started whispering that Ghislaine had been writing everything down. Not just names, not just dates, but entire stories, scenes, conversations, the kind of stuff that can't be easily denied. One inmate, known only as Tamika, told an independent reporter she'd be scribbling for hours, talking to herself, laughing sometimes, like she was remembering people who used to kiss her ring. She said, "They thought I was just Epstein's lapdog, but I built half that empire myself." And when Tamika asked her why she was writing so much, Ghislaine's answer was chilling. Because it's insurance. And because some duchess needs to be reminded how she got there. Let's rewind. That diary page referred to July 2007. That's the same period Prince Andrew was a known guest at several Mediterranean yacht parties hosted by Epstein-linked billionaires. These were ultra-private gatherings. No press, no photos, no paper trails. The kind of events where guests arrived under aliases and entertainers were flown in discreetly. And who was allegedly among those guests? A young American actress, mixed race, petite, described by one steward as stunning, very poised, but clearly scared. She introduced herself as M. She stayed for 3 days, then vanished. That same week, Prince Andrew's yacht logs went mysteriously incomplete. One day, completely missing. And guess what? According to that diary entry, that's the very day Meghan allegedly cried the whole night. Let's talk about the word late. She was late. We both knew what that meant. In the context of any woman in her 20s, that's a loaded phrase. But in the context of Ghislaine Maxwell's diary, written during an era when young women were routinely brought to elite yachts and manipulated into silence, it means one thing: pregnancy. We're not saying Meghan was pregnant with Prince Andrew's child. We are saying that Ghislaine believed she might have been. And that belief, in her world, was enough to trigger panic. Ghislaine didn't panic easily. So what happened? Why would she document such a moment and keep it buried for over a decade, only to bring it up now? Because, in her mind, this wasn't just a personal anecdote. It was leverage. Now let's flash forward to 2016. That's when Prince Harry reportedly began dating Meghan. The public didn't find out until later, but royal insiders knew. One of those insiders has now confirmed that background checks were rushed but thorough. According to a palace staffer who has since retired, we had a red flag come up from Europe, something tied to yacht records and a socialite who's now incarcerated. But it was dismissed, buried. When asked why it was dismissed, the staffer replied, "Because someone high up said, this isn't about Andrew anymore. This is bigger. She's part of the solution now." Let that sink in. Could Meghan Markle's relationship with Harry have been encouraged by the palace as a way to neutralize what might have been a far more damaging connection to Andrew? Could marrying into the royal family have been her insulation? And could the diary, Ghislaine's diary, be the only thing left that still points to the truth? Here's where it gets even murkier. Sources say that Ghislaine kept multiple diaries. Some were coded. Some were straightforward. But the one containing Meghan's name was allegedly called the Velvet File. In it, Ghislaine reportedly detailed the women she believed had potential. Potential for what? That's unclear. But what is clear? She used their names like assets. And Meghan was one of the few she highlighted with a gold star. One entry read, "M is smart. Too smart. But she wants the dream. She's tired of scraping. I told her, you'll never need to audition again if you just stay quiet this weekend." She said, "Even if it's him?" Again, names were omitted. But if him referred to Andrew, the implications are devastating. Because that would mean a young woman, barely known, was offered a deal. Stay quiet, play nice, and you'll be rewarded. Rewarded how? With roles, with connections, with introductions to the world of elite circles that eventually led, perhaps indirectly, perhaps not, to the royal family. It sounds like a movie, but sometimes the truth wants to sound like fiction, so people won't believe it. Let's be brutally honest. If Ghislaine Maxwell is lying, why risk writing Meghan's name at all? Why tie herself to the most high-profile duchess in modern history? Why now? Because Meghan is valuable. Not as a friend, not as an enemy, as currency. The kind of currency Ghislaine can trade for reduced time, or better conditions, or simply attention. And if Meghan, or the royals, have anything to hide, Ghislaine knows it'll make them nervous. She's playing a long game from a short cage. That's how she's always played. But that leads us to another question. What did Meghan do after that alleged weekend? Where did she go? Who did she contact? There are no public records of any pregnancy-related medical visit. But several private clinics in Europe do not require ID, only cash. And at least one clinic in Monaco burned down in 2010. Arson was suspected. According to one firefighter's report, boxes marked 2007 were already soaked when they arrived. Coincidence? Or cleanup? Now let's step back. Could all of this be a lie? Absolutely. Ghislaine Maxwell is a convicted criminal. She's lied before. She's manipulated. She's played people like chess pieces. But here's the contradiction. That's what makes her believable. She would have the receipts. She would have the memories. She would know exactly who boarded those yachts, who drank too much, who cried in silence, who begged her not to ruin their lives. And if she wrote it all down, she's not just dangerous. She's unstoppable. Because what's a more powerful threat than a convicted trafficker whispering royal pregnancy scares from her prison bunk? And what happens when the whisper becomes a shout? We're about to find out. Because the next page of that diary was dated the morning after. And it began with a single line. She was gone, but someone else stayed behind. And he looked worried. Where was Meghan Markle during the summer of 2007? No, seriously. Pull up every interview, every archived social media post, every entertainment report from that time. You'll find nothing. Silence. A sudden vanishing act in an otherwise ambitious actress's calendar. No auditions. No magazine appearances. No paparazzi sightings in LA or Toronto. No dated headshots or demo reel updates. Not even a beach selfie. Which, for a woman who would later master the art of curated public presence, is bizarre in itself. So let's ask the question that's been burning ever since Ghislaine Maxwell's prison diary was leaked. Did Meghan Markle disappear because she didn't want to be seen, or because someone didn't want her seen? And if so, who? And why? Let's go back. May 2007. Meghan had just wrapped a string of minor gigs, bit parts in Deal or No Deal, a background character on CSI. New York, and a blink and you miss it role in Love Incorporated. She was still auditioning, still hustling. According to one casting assistant from that period, Meghan was determined. Always polite, but driven. You could tell she wanted out of the grind. She was looking for a breakthrough. And then, just like that, she was gone. No callbacks. No bookings. No agent confirmations. Just radio silence. Until September, when she returned with a new glow, new connections, and strangely, new restrictions. Enter the yachts. During the summer of 2007, the Mediterranean coastline, from Mykonos to Monaco, was hosting a stream of billionaire-owned yacht parties. These weren't your average luxury getaways. These were ultra-exclusive, invite-only gatherings filled with old money, political power, and young women. And one name kept surfacing among staffers and deckhands. M. A woman who showed up under different aliases. Sometimes she was Maddie, sometimes just M. But always with the same physical description. Petite, biracial, early 20s, American accent, elegant posture. One steward described her as a cut above the rest. Like she didn't belong there, but knew she had to pretend she did. Now here's where things get suspicious. On July 11th, 2007, Prince Andrew's private itinerary notes an unscheduled stop in Sardinia. That same day, a crew member on a yacht registered to a wealthy Greek financier filed an unusual log entry. Guest M arrived by tender. No security detail. Accompanied by British gentlemen. Stayed in cabin 3. 2 days later, that same logbook notes that Guest M was visibly distressed and requested to leave early. A private helicopter arrived at dawn. The steward who helped load her luggage wrote. She kept saying, "I didn't know. No one told me it would be like this." Who was Guest M? And why has every trace of her visit been scrubbed? Let's dig deeper. Yacht charters like these often hire a rotating crew, meaning people come and go frequently, and NDAs are standard. But one woman, now retired, agreed to speak off record. She worked on the same yacht during the summer of 2007. Her account? Chilling. There was a girl, very poised, very quiet. She didn't drink much. She wore a white one-piece swimsuit that looked expensive but wasn't designer. I only remember her because one night, she stood at the edge of the deck for nearly an hour, just staring at the moon. What was she thinking about? Was she already regretting something? Or was she trying to decide whether to say yes to someone powerful? This same crew member later claimed that guest M left behind a paperback novel marked with a lipstick-stained tissue tucked between pages 117 and 118. The title? The Price of Everything. Fiction? Yes. But symbolic? Maybe. Now here's the real kicker. Meghan Markle's passport shows no international travel from July to September 2007, at least not officially. But private flights and tendered yacht guests don't go through typical customs procedures. And one name, M. Ragland, does appear on a private flight manifest from Nice to London on July 18, 2007. Ragland, of course, is Meghan's mother's surname. The problem? Doria Ragland was in Los Angeles that week, attending a wellness retreat, confirmed by a now public photograph from the event. So who was this M. Ragland? Was it a cover identity? Was Meghan returning from something she couldn't explain? And if so, what did she leave behind? Let's talk about the emotional angle. Why would Meghan, a young woman with Hollywood ambitions, place herself in this world of yachts, billionaires, and royals? Because ambition is a powerful force, especially when paired with uncertainty. She wanted more. She deserved more. And in the brutal world of Hollywood, sometimes the fastest way up is sideways. Someone, possibly Maxwell herself, might have whispered the ultimate carrot. Play along, and doors will open. Stay quiet, and you'll never audition again. Imagine being 25, hungry for opportunity, dazzled by wealth, and then blindsided by something you didn't sign up for. A conversation that went too far. A hand that lingered too long. A door that locked behind you. And suddenly, you're in a situation where silence feels safer than escape. According to one insider, Meghan left the yacht early. But not before something happened that left a mark. That something could have been emotional, could have been physical, but either way, it changed her. And then, the transformation. When Meghan reemerged in the fall of 2007, she looked different. Not in appearance, though her style had become more polished, but in behavior. She spoke less in interviews, avoided personal questions, didn't mention travel stories, didn't brag about summer vacations. She became curated. A new publicist was hired. A new manager was brought in. Suddenly, she was invited to exclusive Soho House events, photographed with British socialites, introduced to elite circles years before her connection to Prince Harry. How? How does someone go from struggling additions to rubbing shoulders with the London elite practically overnight? Who opened the door? And why? Here's where the conspiracy kicks into overdrive. An anonymous email leaked to a UK journalist in 2020 contained just 3 lines. She knew Andrew before she knew Harry. There was a reason she never wanted to be in the same room with him. Look at Sardinia, July 2007. The journalist dismissed it at the time, until Ghislaine's diary surfaced. And now, every investigator who once laughed it off is digging. Because the more you look at the gaps, the more it feels like someone designed this silence. And silence, my friends, is expensive. Someone paid for that summer to disappear. And the woman who lived through it came back ready to conquer a world that once tried to consume her. But at what cost? Because no one walks off those yachts unchanged. There's one more thing. A photographer based in Monaco, now retired, claims to have once developed film that included Meghan Markle. I didn't know who she was then. Just a pretty woman in white on a boat with some older men. But later, when she got famous, I recognized her. That's the girl. I remember, because one of the men called her Golden Girl. That nickname shows up again, months later, in Ghislaine's notes. Golden Girl was Maxwell's code for women she considered marketable, photogenic, and manageable. Meghan was Golden Girl. And yet, she slipped through. She got out. Or did she? Because the next entry in the Velvet file reads, "She was scared, but she played it right. He said she'd be a problem, but I said, give it time. She'll come around." Who said she'd be a problem? Was it Andrew? Was it someone higher? And did Meghan really get away? Or did she just get upgraded? And here's the final twist. Years later, when Meghan joined the royal family, there was one public engagement that never happened. A planned appearance with Prince Andrew. It was abruptly canceled. No explanation. And after that, there were no joint appearances. No photo ops. No polite interactions. Why? Because maybe she didn't want to be near him. Or maybe she was told to stay away. And if that's true, then someone knew about that summer. Someone high up. And they were willing to bury it to protect the narrative. But what happens when the woman they tried to bury becomes royalty? And what happens when the only person who remembers everything is locked behind bars and ready to talk? Because the next entry in Ghislaine's diary mentions a photograph, a moment, a smile that wasn't real, and the man standing beside her wasn't Harry. But what came next would finally expose the man who was. He captured the moment that wasn't meant to exist, and by the time he realized what he had, it was already too late. Let's talk about the photo, the one no one's supposed to have, the one that allegedly shows Meghan Markle and Prince Andrew together, not shaking hands at a royal event, not smiling in a staged lineup, but standing close, casual, comfortable, and disturbingly intimate. It wasn't grainy paparazzi work. It was clean, sharp, framed like a magazine cover. And it was taken on a yacht in the Mediterranean during the summer of 2007. The man behind the lens? A semi-retired British photographer named Daniel Keane, once known for his dazzling high society photos, the kind that made European tabloids sell out overnight. Back in the 90s, Keane had shot everyone from Princess Diana to Leonardo DiCaprio. He wasn't paparazzi trash, he was a trusted insider. And then, in 2008, he vanished from the industry. No scandal, no farewell, just gone. But now we know why. Because Daniel Keane took the photo that could have ended careers, destroyed reputations, and shattered the myth of royal innocence before it even began. And someone made sure he'd never release it. So how did Keane end up there? According to multiple crew interviews and an old email leak from a modeling agency, Keane was hired for a private yachting party hosted off the coast of Sardinia. The client? A shadowy holding company later linked to Ghislaine Maxwell's business partner in France. The event was described as an ultra-select, weekend-long retreat for investors and creatives. Keane was promised €25,000 for 2 days of shooting. No press, no syndication, just photos for the private guests. This kind of gig wasn't unusual. Keane had done it before, but this one felt different. According to his close friend, Keane returned to London visibly shaken. He said, "Mate, I shot something I can't unsee. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it." His tone was off. Not proud, not excited. Scared. When asked for details, Keane refused. "I've already said too much," he whispered. So what was in the photo? A whistleblower who briefly handled Keane's film said it featured a woman in white and a man in navy, standing close on the deck, his hand on her back. The woman was later identified, privately, as Meghan Markle. And the man? Prince Andrew. No security in the frame. No other guests. Just them. Isolated. Close. Too close. The photo never made it into any known publication. Keane never submitted it. Instead, he stored the negatives in a climate-controlled vault he used for rare, unreleased work. But not long after, the vault was broken into. Nothing else was taken. Just one roll of negatives. The one from Sardinia. And just like that, the moment was gone. Except not quite. Because Keane had already made a single backup. A high-resolution scan. Encrypted. Sent to a friend overseas. This friend, known only by the pseudonym Alec, went underground for over a decade. And in 2019, during the height of the Epstein scandal, Alec received an anonymous email. "You're still holding insurance. Delete it, or we delete you." No signature. No traceable IP. But the message was clear. The image still existed. And someone wanted it destroyed. Now here's the twist. In 2021, during the early leaks of Ghislaine Maxwell's deposition material, one strange file appeared on a dark web server for less than 12 hours. It was labeled m&mdexide.jpg. Most users couldn't download it before it vanished. But one did. And while the original image was corrupted, only partially recoverable, metadata showed a timestamp. July 13th, 2007, 6:43 p.m. Location, 41.0869 degrees north, 9.5215 degrees east, just off the coast of Sardinia. Two people silhouetted against a pink-gold horizon. One in a flowing white dress. One in a crisp collared shirt. No faces, but body language, undeniable. They weren't strangers. They weren't talking. They were touching. Who leaked it? And more importantly, who deleted it? Theories vary. Some say it was Ghislaine herself. leveraging her last pieces of power before sentencing. Others believe Keane released it as a last stand, knowing the full photo would never survive, but the idea of it might. A digital fingerprint, proof of a forgotten moment. One royal staffer told an insider reporter, "We were told to monitor mentions of deck photo across all media platforms. If anyone posted it, we shut them down. Fast." The order came from the highest levels. They were scared. But why? What could a single photo do that Ghislaine's words couldn't? The answer is simple. Pictures don't lie. And if Meghan and Andrew were photographed together in a way that contradicted everything the royal family has claimed since, it wouldn't just be a scandal. It would be a rewriting of royal history. Let's look at the timeline. July 2007, Meghan disappears for weeks. July 13th, alleged yacht photo is taken. July 18th, an unknown passenger using the name M. Ragland flies from Nice to London. July 19th, Daniel Keane receives full payment, plus a non-disclosure contract he claims he never agreed to. August 2007, Keane leaves the photography industry, deletes his website, cancels all future bookings. He tells friends he's taking a sabbatical. He never returns. By 2009, he's off the grid. Where is he now? No one knows. In 2022, a cryptic blog post surfaced under the username DKPhotic, a long, rambling essay about truth, silence, and regret. One line stood out. "I saw her before she became royalty. She looked lost, not because she didn't know where she was, but because she didn't know who she'd have to become." The blog was deleted within 24 hours, but that sentence lingered, because it echoed everything we've come to suspect. That Meghan Markle's path to royalty was paved with secrets, and one of those secrets was caught on camera by a man who now lives in hiding, or worse. Let's ask the hard question. Why did this photo matter so much? It wasn't illegal. It wasn't explicit. It didn't show wrongdoing, but it suggested something. A relationship, a connection, a history. And in the world of the royals, implication is everything. If Meghan knew Andrew before Harry, if they were ever romantically or personally entangled, it would destroy her credibility. It would cast doubt on her motives, and it would hand her fiercest critics the ultimate weapon. Suddenly, the narrative of love and resilience becomes strategy and survival. And no palace can afford that kind of rewriting. Not with Andrew already disgraced. Not with Harry already exiled. Not with the monarchy already hanging by a thread. And the final twist? A former intelligence analyst claims MI6 kept a copy of the photo. Digital surveillance on British citizens includes offshore engagements, especially with royal involvement. That photo was archived, sealed, and marked compromising. Red level. He paused, then added, "There were 2 people in the photo, but only one became dangerous. Guess which one?" So what happened to Daniel Keane? No body was ever found. No obituaries. Just a man who took the wrong photo and vanished. But not before leaving behind a silent message to the world. They'll try to bury the image, but they can't bury the truth. And the woman in white? The one who stood beside a prince before she ever married one. She never acknowledged it. She never denied it. But in every interview since, she flinched when asked about her early summer of 2007. And her silence says more than any caption ever could. Because the next clue in this puzzle isn't a photograph. It's a call log. A string of late-night messages from a palace landline to a Los Angeles number. And the voice on the other end didn't belong to Harry. But what that voice said next would ignite a whole new scandal. The palace had a rule: never write, never email, never text. But Andrew liked the sound of his own voice. There's something ancient about a voice on a landline. It crackles. It lingers. It's analog, human, but in the wrong context. When documented, time-stamped, and cross-referenced, it becomes damning. Because for all the caution that surrounds the royal family's communication protocols, there's always one who breaks the rules. In this case, Prince Andrew. And what began as a curious metadata trail has now turned into a digital Rosetta Stone, exposing not only who he was calling in 2007, but how often, how late, and what may have been said. And right there, in the middle of it all, is a name buried behind a U.S. area code. M. Markle, L.A. Let's rewind to July 2007. The same timeline we've been tracing: the vanishing summer, the mysterious yacht party, and the alleged photograph. According to leaked telecom records from a British intelligence contractor, first uncovered during the Epstein investigation, Prince Andrew's personal residence line made 17 calls to a Los Angeles number over the course of 9 days. The number was registered to a now-defunct talent agency in West Hollywood, but it's who used the number that matters. At the time, that agency represented only 3 active clients. One of them, Meghan Markle. The records show late-night call times between 10:45 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. London time. That's afternoon in Los Angeles. Curious, right? Especially considering Prince Andrew's public calendar had no reason for such frequent contact with a junior-level actress across the Atlantic. No business, no charity event, no mutual project, just silence and static, and the phone that kept ringing. So what was said? We don't have the recordings, but we do have the patterns. Each call lasted between 8 and 22 minutes, long enough for small talk. Or something more. A palace insider who monitored outbound security briefings later told an investigative team. Andrew wasn't using burner phones at that time. He thought the landline was safe. Naive, really. Everything went through an old switchboard, and if you knew where to look, you could see every number. When asked if there was ever concern about who he was calling, the insider replied, "Oh, we knew. The concern wasn't the number. It was the girl on the other end." And just like that, the whispers began. Let's talk about the code names. In one internal memo, later leaked during a separate court case, a set of nicknames was used to label sensitive contacts in Andrew's phone log. Golden Girl, Yankee Sparkle, and most intriguingly, M&M. The memo noted that Golden Girl was contacted multiple times from the Royal Lodge, followed by a redacted comment marked, "Proceed with caution. PR risk." One former palace aide described these entries as black box contacts, people who couldn't be named openly but were flagged as potential liabilities. And M&M? Her entry came with a second notation, crescendo developing, may require containment. That line would later haunt investigators. Because while the royal family was dealing with PR fallout from Andrew's friendship with Epstein, this was the file no one wanted opened. The file that didn't involve trafficking charges or lawsuits. Just a relationship. One that, if exposed, would unravel the fairy tale. But here's where it gets worse. According to a digital forensic expert who worked alongside the FBI during the Epstein raids, a backup server contained a list of flagged transatlantic call threads tied to UK public figures. The list wasn't supposed to exist, but it did, and nestled between calls to known associates of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein was a thread marked UK, Prince Andrew US, MM, actress. Duration, 19 minutes. Subject, private. Emotional, untraceable. Entry tag, the baby email. Let that settle in. The baby email. Was it a follow-up? A panic message? A manipulation tactic? No one knows. But the word baby would come up again, and again, and again, in call logs, in witness notes, even in Ghislaine's diary. Now let's look at Meghan's side. Multiple attempts were made to retrieve archived data from her old agency accounts and personal phones. Most came up empty. But one former assistant, who worked under Meghan's early management team, told a podcast in 2021. There was a time Meghan would lock herself in the bathroom to take calls. She said it was a prince from the UK, but she didn't say which one. We thought it was a joke. She'd come out pale. Sometimes she'd cry. Sometimes she'd smile like she just won the lottery. Another assistant recalled a conversation where Meghan said, "If he keeps calling, I'm going to get in trouble." But what if this is the break I've been waiting for? She wasn't talking about Harry. Harry was still a decade away. So who was she talking about? And what did those calls mean? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When the palace finally caught wind of the M&M connection, everything changed. Suddenly, background checks for future royal brides became more aggressive. Private investigators were hired. Old contacts were threatened, and the man who had recorded the call logs, a subcontractor for MI5, was allegedly placed under a gag order. One journalist who tried to reach him was told, "He's under security review." No comment. When the journalist pushed further, the response came cold. This isn't about Epstein anymore. It's about preservation. Preservation of what? A narrative, a bloodline, a myth. Because if Prince Andrew ever had a personal connection with Meghan Markle, Before she met Harry, it wouldn't just be tabloid fodder. It would be timeline poison. Think about it. A prince known for scandal. A future duchess with alleged past ties to him. A series of transatlantic phone calls. A possible pregnancy scare. Now mix that into the royal institution's most high-profile romance in decades. It's a PR bomb. And worse, it's the kind of story that would leave even the most sympathetic supporters wondering, was Meghan's fairy tale a cover-up? Let's go back to The Voice. One night, in October 2007, Prince Andrew made a final call to the LA number. This one lasted just 4 minutes. The log includes one chilling note, recorded by a security transcript monitor who later spoke off record. He said, "You were never supposed to stay. I warned you. Don't make me regret this." That was the last recorded contact. Days later, the LA number was disconnected, and Meghan Markle, according to her own words, recommitted to acting and left that summer behind. But that's the thing about phones. They remember, and even when the voices stop, the echoes remain. One final twist. During a 2018 royal vetting interview, a palace advisor allegedly asked Meghan if she'd ever had any contact with Andrew prior to meeting Harry. Her response? Laughter, followed by, "God, no, that would have been awkward." But a staffer in the room said her eyes darted. Just for a second. And in that second, a million questions were born. Because if the calls were real, if the emotions were genuine, if Andrew really did say, "Don't make me regret this," then what was their connection? And why was the palace so desperate to hide it? Because the next confession doesn't come from a phone call. It comes from a man in uniform, a yacht steward with a guilty conscience. And what he saw on that deck might just blow everything wide open. And what came next would turn whispers into weapons. He served the wine. He cleaned the linens. He held the tray while they laughed under the Mediterranean moon. But what he witnessed that night, he never forgot. In stories like these, it's usually the powerful who control the narrative. The billionaires, the royals, the handlers, lawyers, and PR teams who spin silk from scandal. But sometimes, the truth comes from the quiet ones. The invisible ones. The man who folds the towels, presses the shirts, and lights the deck lanterns. The one who walks past private doors and hears things he was never meant to hear. And in this story, his name was Alessandro Moretti. Known simply as Sandro to the crew, he was a steward aboard a superyacht in the summer of 2007, chartered under an anonymous holding group later tied to Jeffrey Epstein's offshore network. He wasn't a whistleblower. Not at first. But what he saw, what he heard, haunted him. And years later, racked with guilt and facing terminal illness, he finally told someone. It began with a whisper. A journalist named Nico Salvatori was chasing loose ends on a separate Epstein-related tip in Milan. Nothing explosive, just a money trail. But one source mentioned an ex-steward who once worked a party with a royal guest and an American actress who left in tears. That caught Nico's attention. After some digging, he found Sandro, now living quietly in a coastal town south of Genoa. Retired, reclusive, diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer. When Nico asked for an interview, Sandro refused. Until the next day, he called back with one sentence. "If I tell you what happened, you must wait to publish until I die. I want no trouble for my family." Nico agreed. Sandro poured himself a glass of red wine, sat down, and opened a door that had been locked for 16 years. She looked nervous from the moment she arrived. That's how Sandro described Meghan Markle, though he never used her name. He called her the American. She boarded the yacht by Tinder just before sunset. A small leather bag, white sundress, hair pulled into a low bun. No security escort. No dramatic entrance. Just quiet. According to Sandro, the guest list was limited. Only 6 passengers. All men, except the American, and another woman who seemed more like a handler than a guest. And one of the men? Il Principe. Sandro said the crew used the nickname jokingly, but everyone knew who it meant. Prince Andrew. He arrived hours earlier. Already in casual attire. Comfortable. Confident. Unconcerned. When the American boarded, he smiled and said, "Ah, there she is. Not who is she, but there she is." As if she was expected. Pre-approved. Pre-selected. Dinner was served on the upper deck. Sandro was assigned wine service. He stayed quiet, moved methodically, and listened. What he remembers most vividly isn't what they said, but how they looked. She laughed when he touched her hand, but it was a forced laugh. I've seen it before. The laugh of someone told to be agreeable. Throughout the night, Prince Andrew and the American drifted toward each other, away from the others. By dessert, they were seated alone at the stern. A long conversation, some smiles, then a visible change. She dropped her fork. Twice. Her hands were shaking. Later that night, Sandro was called to the private deck lounge for turn-down service. He wasn't supposed to enter while guests were still inside, but the door was ajar. And what he saw? She was crying. Not sobbing, but quiet tears. She was in a robe, barefoot. He was sitting across from her, holding a drink. He said something like, "You know the rules. It's not love. It's opportunity." Sandro froze. He backed away, but not before he saw the look in her eyes. Like someone who realized they made a deal they didn't understand. The next morning, she was gone. Not gradually. Not with a farewell. Vanished. Her bag was removed at dawn. No breakfast. No goodbyes. Just silence. Sandro said he asked the other steward what happened. The reply? She had a scare. He made arrangements. When pressed for more, the other steward, a woman named Anna, shook her head. Don't ask again. It's not our world. Later that day, Sandro found a small paper bag in the bin of the guest room the American had stayed in. Inside, a pregnancy test wrapper. The brand, clear blue. The test itself was gone. But the wrapper? Sandro kept it. He didn't know why. Maybe he thought someone might need it one day. He folded it into a towel and buried it in the lining of his suitcase. He took it with him when he left the yacht for good, 2 weeks later. Years passed. He never spoke of it, but he watched the world change. He saw Meghan Markle rise from obscurity, become a duchess, a mother, and still, he stayed silent. Until the Epstein scandal broke wide open. Until Prince Andrew was disgraced. Until Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested. And then, the memories surged back. Not because he wanted revenge, but because the lie had grown too big. People think it's about sex or scandal, Sandro told Nico. But to me, it's about what we do when we see someone suffer and we do nothing. And here's the twist. Sandro never named Meghan directly. But when Nico asked for clarification, Sandro reached for an old cigar box. Inside, the wrapper from the pregnancy test. And a napkin. On the napkin, smeared lipstick. A single word. Written in eyeliner. Sorry. That napkin matched the yacht's 2007 linens, identifiable by the embroidery on the corners. And the lipstick shade? Chanel Rouge Allure number 99, the same color Meghan wore in a 2006 red carpet event. It's circumstantial, but chillingly specific. After Sandro's death in 2022, Nico published the account under the title, The Steward's Confession. The article gained traction, then disappeared from several platforms within hours. Copyright issues, they claimed. But some suspected higher powers. The physical copy of the article? It circulated online. Screenshots were shared on forums, YouTube videos, and conspiracy sites. But the central image, the napkin, the wrapper, the quote, remained untouched by lawsuits. No denials, no confirmations, just silence. Let's pause for a second. Was Sandro lying? Was this all a dying man's fantasy? It's possible. But if it was a lie, why risk his family's safety? Why keep a test wrapper for 15 years? Why say nothing until the names were already in the news? The answer is simple. Because he wasn't seeking attention. He was seeking redemption, and maybe accountability, for what he witnessed, and what he failed to stop. And now, that cabin, that napkin, that test, they're part of the Royal Shadow Archive. Never officially acknowledged, but never fully buried. And Meghan? She's never spoken of that summer. Never been asked. Never had to answer. But the question still lingers. Like a tide that refuses to recede. What happened on that yacht? Who was she before the palace? And why was a steward's dying breath filled with her name? Because the next chapter isn't about servants or whispers. It's about power. The kind that controls biographers, erases chapters, and leaves only the blank spaces where truth used to be. And what came next was a manuscript that almost never saw the light of day. When the man who's written takedowns of billionaires, presidents, and royal heirs says, "I'm being followed," you listen. Tom Bauer doesn't scare easily. For decades, he's been the go-to guy for uncovering the rot behind fame and fortune. He's exposed media moguls, political tycoons, and yes, even the royal family. He's been sued, threatened, blacklisted, but never silenced. Until now. Because when Tom Bower started researching Meghan Markle for his explosive, unauthorized biography, he stumbled across a file that made even him pause. A chapter he drafted, twice, then deleted. Why? Because it didn't just implicate Meghan. It whispered the unthinkable, that her path to royalty might have been carved years earlier, on a yacht, with a prince and a secret too dangerous to print. Let's back up. In 2021, Tom Bower began work on what would become Revenge. Meghan, Harry, and the war between the Windsors. From the start, the book was controversial. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. Sources clammed up. Documents went missing. Emails were hacked. And Bower, used to navigating elite secrecy, started facing walls that even he couldn't breach. One publisher executive later admitted, the stuff he couldn't put in the book, that's the real story. And at the center of that off-the-record chaos, a folder simply labeled Yacht Girl Files. What were the Yacht Girl Files? Rumors of this file had circulated in fringe royal forums for years. A compilation of images, testimonies, travel logs, and coded names of young women allegedly recruited or invited to elite yachting events involving global power players. These weren't criminal records. They were reputational landmines. No illegal acts, but implied complicity, and one name appeared repeatedly: Meghan Markle. According to a former royal researcher who briefly worked under Bower, he was shocked when he saw her name. Not because of the inclusion, but because of the date she appeared. That same summer we've been tracing since Chapter 1. But here's the twist. Bower didn't seek the Yacht Girl files. They were sent to him. An anonymous package. No return address. Just a handwritten note that read, "Don't trust the palace. This is the chapter they'll kill to stop." Inside the envelope, photocopies of travel logs, party guest lists, a blurry black and white photo of a woman resembling Meghan, standing at the edge of a yacht with a man who could be Prince Andrew, and a single page titled, The Pregnancy Protocol. Now pause. We don't know what the pregnancy protocol included. Bower never published it. But according to leaks from a now-deleted private forum where Bower once shared early drafts, the protocol outlined how certain guests were handled after unexpected outcomes during elite gatherings. One line read, "If the guest reports concern, she is to be comforted, silenced, and relocated." The language was chilling, clinical, and guest M was mentioned directly. Tom Bower allegedly wrote a draft chapter called Andrew's American Mistake. It detailed Meghan's sudden rise in elite circles, her alleged connection to Prince Andrew, and the subsequent royal panic once Harry began seriously dating her in 2016. The chapter never saw print. Why? Because Bower received what one insider called a midnight knock. A midnight knock. In journalist speak, it's code for an untraceable warning. Someone from an agency, or a private security firm. Not police. Not formal, but serious. One publishing assistant who worked with Bower at the time confirmed. He told us someone showed up at his home, asked him if he valued his access to royal sources, and handed him a sealed letter. He never opened it in front of us. But the next day, that chapter was gone. Gone from the manuscript. Gone from his notes. Even gone from his encrypted backups. When asked about it during an interview, Bower gave a rare pause. Then said, "Some stories you don't tell in a book. You save them. For leverage." That wasn't denial. That was fear. But what was so damning? It wasn't just the possibility of a pre-Harry relationship between Meghan and Andrew. It was what it implied. That Meghan Markle, years before stepping into Kensington Palace, may have been compromised, used, pressured, or simply pulled into a world she later tried to escape. That her silence was part of the deal. And that when she broke the deal by becoming a duchess, the people who remembered that summer panicked. Because what if it all came out? What if someone, like Bower, published everything? Not in a blog, but in print, in history. Let's talk about the fallout. After Revenge was published, several legal letters were sent to Bower's publisher. Not about what was included, but about what wasn't. According to a whistleblower paralegal, they were desperate to know if he had drafts, if anything had been saved, if the files still existed. One letter allegedly referenced the Sardinia summer, sensitive photographs, and pre-royal entanglements. All euphemisms. All red flags. And yet, nothing in Revenge references yachts. Or Andrew. Or that mysterious summer. Why? Because sometimes omission is more dangerous than exposure. And Bauer knew exactly what not to say. Which, in turn, said everything. But the silence didn't last. Weeks after publication, Bauer was spotted meeting with a former MI6 analyst. According to body language experts who reviewed the footage, Bauer looked tense, guarded, and unusually deferential. This wasn't a man collecting sources. This was a man being debriefed. And one expert had a chilling observation. Bauer didn't act like someone hunting a story. He acted like someone protecting one. So what does this mean? It means the truth was close. Too close. And someone shut it down. It means that even the boldest biographer in Britain hit a wall when he got near this chapter. And it means that Meghan Markle's past isn't just controversial. It's protected. By silence. By omission. By fear. The chapter that never made it to print? That's the one the palace cared about. Because it didn't just challenge the narrative, it reversed it. And one more thing. There's a theory, unconfirmed, but persistent, that a rogue copy of Bauer's deleted chapter exists. Printed. Hidden. Waiting. One researcher claims he saw it at a journalist's flat in Paris. Another says a former Soho House executive has it in a safe. But no one will confirm. Because possession of that chapter is dangerous. It's not just words. It's a trigger. For lawsuits. For firings. For royal crisis teams. Because what it contains, if real, is the truth behind why Meghan Markle had to marry Harry. And why she could never be near Andrew again. Because if that chapter ever sees the light of day, it won't be a royal expose. It'll be a confession. And the next confession doesn't come from a journalist, or a steward, or a biographer. It comes from the woman who held the syringe. The nurse who knows what really happened after the yacht. The nurse who claims, she wasn't just late. She was scared, and they made me help her forget. And what she did next will change everything you think you know. She walked into the clinic alone, sunglasses on, scarf pulled low, trembling. The name she gave? It wasn't Meghan. The idea seems outlandish at first. Outrageous even. The very suggestion that Meghan Markle, future Duchess of Sussex, wife to Prince Harry, may have once been pregnant for Prince Andrew doesn't just sound scandalous. It sounds impossible. But impossible things have a way of happening behind closed doors. Especially when billionaires, royals, and secrets are involved. And now, after years of whispers, one woman has come forward. A woman who claims she was there. Not on the yacht. Not at the palace. But in the room. With Meghan. With the test. With the decision. Her name? Nurse Emily Laurent. Let's begin with the clinic. According to multiple flight records and a confidential European medical database leak, someone traveling under the alias Margot R. checked into Clinique Cœur de Femme, a discreet women's health facility in Monaco, on July 17, 2007. The clinic, now shut down after a mysterious fire in 2010, specialized in reproductive health for high-net-worth clientele. It catered to discretion. First names only. No insurance. No ID. It was the kind of place people used when their secrets were worth more than their reputations. Nurse Emily, who worked there for over 12 years, had stayed silent. Until now. She spoke to an independent French journalist in a hidden location in late 2023. Her voice was low. Her hair dyed. Her name changed in transcripts. But her story? Unmistakable. I'll never forget her face, Emily said. She was beautiful, but broken. Like someone who had smiled too long and forgot how to stop. Emily recalled that Margot R. arrived just after sunrise. No entourage, just a driver. The appointment had been made 2 days earlier by a man with a British accent. The purpose? A pregnancy test. And, if necessary, a consultation. Here's where things get eerie. Emily says the woman refused to remove her sunglasses, even in the exam room. I gently asked her, "Are you sure you're safe?" She nodded, then whispered, "I just need to know. Before they make me decide." That phrase haunted Emily. Before they make me decide. Who were they? She didn't ask. But when the test came back positive, the woman broke down. Not dramatically, not loudly, but completely. She collapsed into herself. I'd seen fear before. But this was resignation. Like she knew she'd never get to choose. Emily administered a sedative. Standard protocol for extreme emotional distress. Before the woman drifted into sleep, Emily says she murmured something she'll never forget. He told me it was nothing, just a weekend. But now he'll bury me. When asked who he was, the woman didn't answer. But Emily remembered one final detail. As she helped the woman into a recovery robe, she saw initials embroidered inside the collar. MM. Let's take a breath. Could this be coincidence? Could Margot have been someone else? Sure, but there's more. A now-deleted forum thread from a Royal Watcher blog in 2013 mentioned an old French clinic nurse who once said, "A duchess once cried in my hands, years before her wedding, and she wasn't married to the right prince."